Bones Part 2. Periosteum is the dense connective tissue surrounding and covering the bone. Peri means perimeter, osteo, bone. Again, it covers the outer surface of the bone. It is made of dense connective tissue, and it contains blood vessels to nourish the bone, nerves so we can feel bone bruise, osteoclasts for chewing away bone not necessary, and osteoblasts for adding bone. Endosteum is the same type of stuff. It's dense connective tissue lining the internal part of the bone, which is called the medullary cavity. So the medulla is the middle, so mainly the diaphysis there, the hollow part of the bone, and it's made of dense connective tissue again. Endo, inside of, osteo, bone. It contains osteoblasts. Remember, osteoblasts can build bone. Moving on to bone fractures. Alright, so basically two main types of bone breaks. A fracture is a break. You've got a simple fracture where the bone is broken but not protruding throughout the skin. Then you've got a compound fracture, which, unlike its name, is not compound. It just protrudes outside the skin. This is an example of a compound fracture in the distal phalanx. You can see the bone sticking outside the skin. The different types of bone fractures: we got a green stick, which is incomplete fracture. We got a spiral, which comes at an angle. We got comminuted, which is more than one break, and transverse, which goes transversely across. A compound fracture, again, is where the bone protrudes outside the skin. Back to the bones on the inside. Two types of bones based upon their structure. If you look on the outside of the bone, where it's compact and hard, that part of bone we call compact bone. The medulla, the medullary cavity of the bone, and the epiphyseal ends are made of this scaffolding, looks like a bunch of scaffolding, which is called cancellous bone. The common name is spongy bone. Okay, an osteon is each one of those circles in compact bone is an osteon. It is the basic unit of structure of compact bone. Now, it's also called Haversian system, again, because Clopton Havers, the old Swedish scientist, was the first one to discover it or write it up. An osteon is the basic unit of compact bone. Here's a better picture under the microscope. You can see the little central canal where the blood vessels come up. See, each little dark area here is the lacuna. The lacuna is where the osteocyte, the bone cell, resides. Little cracks heading out towards them are called canaliculi, tiny little canals, which bring nourishment and take extra waste from the cell. If you look, you can see little layers here, little rings put around like a tree ring. Those little rings are lamellate sheaths of bone. We call them lamellae, kind of like laminate. So again, there's the osteon, is the circular area with the blood vessel coming out of the middle. And it consists of the lamellae, which I said is the sheets of bone. And lamellae are thin sheets of extracellular matrix, the hydroxyapatite laid down to make the bone. As you weight lift and use your muscles more, your osteoblasts are told to put more bone on to make the bone stronger. As you become a couch potato and don't use that part of the bone, the osteoclast take it away. If you don't use it, you lose it. Osteocytes are basically osteoblasts, which have built themselves inside the bone. Once they've built inside the bone, they are now called osteocytes. They're no longer building; they're just maintaining. And they are living in their lacuna. Lacunae is plural, lacuna is singular. So each osteocyte lives in its lacuna. Right, there's another diagram of the osteons. An osteocyte, kind of a goofy drawing of the cell, but it resides inside the little black spaces called lacuna. Now, here's some practice labeling you can do at home on your own to label. Like number 1 is the periosteum. 2 is the medullary cavity. 3 would be the compact bone that's on the outside. 4 is cancellous or spongy bone. 5 is the epiphyseal plate, the growth plate. 6 are the epiphyses, or that's the epiphysis, this is one of them. 7 is the osteon, which is the whole circular area. I'm assuming that's what they're pointing at. 8 is the perforating canal, which brings blood out to the canaliculi. 9 is pointing to the endosteum, the lining. 10 is the little canaliculi, little cracks. It's hard to see what it's pointing to, but that's what it's pointing to. Number 11 is an osteocyte. Of course, they do a goofy little cell up there. 12 we're not going to worry about. 13 is the diaphysis, or the shaft. And 14 is lacuna, the little black area where the cells reside. There's a closer picture of the lamellae put in concentric rings. And there's a little canaliculi, little cracks that allow the nutrients to go from the blood vessels out to each lacuna. The canaliculi are channels running within the lamellae between the osteocytes. Again, there's the canaliculi labeled. I'll do a better arrow this time so you can see it. Canaliculi, if you get your eyes far away from the screen, you can see better cracks there. They're the pathway for nutrients to go from the blood vessels to the central canals and to the osteocytes. Again, they carry nutrients to the blood and waste products from the cells. They look like cracks. Again, they're tiny canals. And waste products do diffuse through them. Okay, cancellous bone, we also call spongy bone because it looks spongy. This is where Gustave Eiffel got his inspiration for the Eiffel Tower. He looked at the edge of the bone and saw this little scaffolding, these rods and structures interlinked, and thought, it's very strong, it's lightweight, and it works. We also call it spongy bone, and it's located primarily in the epiphyses, the long bone, and lining the medullary cavity. And the word is trabeculae, those little scaffolds we call trabeculae. That should be a bright, bold red letter word for you. Trabeculae. Trabeculae is a great picture of actual bone trabeculae. Interconnecting rods or plates of the bone that act as scaffolding. They add strength and light weight because they're hollow. The spaces are filled with marrow, primarily red marrow at the end of the bones. They consist of lamellae with osteocytes living inside them. So again, the osteocytes lay down their lamellate sheets of hydroxyapatite. And here's a nice little overview of it, again in cartoon fashion so it's easy to see. Now moving on, 6 features of a bone, basically gross anatomy of the bone. A foramen is a hole in a bone. Girls, you like this, you can remember that's all a man needs is for a man to have another hole in his head. So foramen magnum is a big hole. Magnum means big. That's where your brainstem protrudes in the spinal column through the bottom of the skull. Fossa. Mufasa. Ooh. Fossa is a depression. So you're depressed when you watch Lion King and Mufasa die. It's a depression or a dip in a bone. A condyle is basically a smooth, rounded end of the bone where it articulates with other bones. You can see a lateral condyle on the lateral side of the body, medial condyle on the inside. I hit the forward button by accident. So they usually fit into a fossa. And they rotate so you can move like a hinge joint. Okay, a process is something that sticks out. Here below the rib cage, on the sternum, we have the xiphoid process projecting from the sternum. So the process is a projection, projection from the bone. Again, there's your xiphoid process sticking off the bottom of your sternum. You can probably feel it. Some people stick out. A tubercle is a tuberosity, or a bump. Tuberculosis is bumps in the lungs. On the bones, they see a tubercle or a bump, they call it a tubercle or tuberosity. It is a lump or a bone, or a bump on a bone. So, if you look at the tibial tuberosity, You can actually feel your tibial tuberosity right below your kneecap, that bump on your tibia. It's a point of attachment. A canal, or meatus, well, a canal is actually a canal, it's a long tube. A meatus is the same thing. Your external auditory meatus is the canal that goes from the outside of your ear to the inside of your ear, which connects your malleus incostapes and all the rest of the hearing components. So canal is basically a hole through the bone. With that, we end on a very short part 2. Dancing Snoopy says, read your chapter 6, study your CLA packet, as well as these notes, and you should do well on the test.